Much like sex with a roommate, the first gun you buy is frequently something that you end up regretting once you get past the fun part. I've known far too many people who have bought something that was cheap and functional as their first gun, only to realize it fit them about as well as Jeff Bezos' human skin. Or Donald Trump's suits, for that matter. Or they buy something cheap only to replace it later and realize that they lost a bunch of money because cheap guns don't hold value the same way that more expensive things would, or simply because it broke. It was cheap. Lots of cheap handguns end up in pawn shops because, well, you're not going to get the value back and you want to get something out of it. Or they end up breaking and end up in a drawer next to your old worn-out vibrator. First of all, if you want to support me, I'm over on Patreon. All this stuff drops a day early over there. You get access to my live streams, and we just dropped a new tier that will include merch, including t-shirts and posters. So go ahead and check that out. But more importantly, I want to give a big shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Turtle Lake Tactical. They're an awesome gun shop with a fantastic online store. They've got the gun I'm going to be talking about today, and I highly recommend going through them, not least of all because if you use the code QueerArmor, you'll get 5% off at checkout. They've got an awesome selection, whatever you're looking for, and I guarantee you, if you want something that you don't find on the website, just reach out to the owner. He's an awesome guy, and he'll work with you on finding whatever you're looking for. And remember, Queer Armorer gets you 5% off any purchase. So, your first gun. Hot take, anything you get, you're gonna suck with at first. When you're first starting out and you're just learning to handle handguns, more likely than not, the thing that will cause problems with every single gun is you, until you've learned how to use it effectively. What you want is something that, 1, makes practicing easier, 2, forces you to master the fundamentals while you're learning, and 3, if you can, something that you won't regret having later on. And let's face it, hate's not going away. That shit is on our collective Velcro. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and disinfect it in order to actually clean it up. If you've never owned a gun and you're otherwise a part of the queer community and you think owning a gun would be a good step for defending yourself and your loved ones, I have a strong recommendation for a first handgun. Something that's become my personal favorite backup gun. This is not that. Don't get me wrong, I am a massive fan of these things, and so are most FUDs, which I guess I might be the queer version of a FUD. Crap, because I am a huge fan of these things. For those of you who don't know, this is an M1911. This is in chambered in .45. It's called an M1911 because it was originally inducted into military service in 1911, which means that it is 110 years of military service because it is still going strong. The problem, at least as a first gun, is twofold. 1, this is a bit like a muscle car. People buy them because they're easy to disassemble and work on. The flip side of that is you have to disassemble it and work on it. There's no way to own one of these things and not be regularly disassembling it, which, if disassembling your gun every night sounds like a fun way to wind down after a stressful day, that's actually part of the appeal of one of these. If you want to be able to leave your gun alone for a few nights, I probably wouldn't recommend this. The other problem is an M1911 shoots a .45 cal. Now, this is a 9mm, this is a .380, and this motherfucker over here is a .45. Now, they are all to scale. But you need to understand that the .45 comes from the fact that it is a .45 caliber bullet, which is significantly wider than a 9mm, and the case itself is longer than a 9mm. Both of these things add up together to mean that .45 has a lot more gas pushing the bullet and a bunch more force from the weight of the bullet coming out the other ends. A 9mm bullet will weigh anywhere between, the lightest ones are in the 50 grain range, all the way up to 148, 150 for the subsonic stuff. This fires a 240 grain bullet as its expected load, which for a beginner isn't really something I'd recommend. God damn, we're on the second page and I haven't even gotten to the gun that I would actually recommend, so allow me to get to that. Ladies, babies, gentlemen, and everybody else, allow me to introduce to you the Smith & Wesson M&P 380 EZ. Let me start by saying that the letters EZ are in the acronym largely because this is designed to be as easy to handle as humanly possible. Every single thing about this gun is designed to make it easy to use. It feels like the firearm equivalent of creative mode in Minecraft for that reason. I do want to bring that M1911 back up and start talking about some things that they actually share. One of the things that I genuinely love about the M1911 is the way that it handles its safety. You have an ambidextrous safety on most models that can be operated by the thumb without breaking your grip, and also this grip safety, that the gun will not go off if you are not grabbing it properly. Now that also leads to the problem that if you're not used to shooting it and you don't get a good grip, you might not actually engage the safety, but that also means you won't shoot it and have it drop out of your hands. And you will notice both of those features are mirrored on the 380EZ. The thumb safety is ambidextrous, and the grip safety that will only engage if you get a good grip. Now, on the one hand, you might hear if you don't get a perfect grip on this, it won't go bang, and think that makes it bad for beginners. I would point out if you don't have a good grip on it, there's a good chance you're going to drop the firearm, which is never good in a defensive situation. The idea behind this is it forces you to learn from the beginning how to get a good grip. And frankly, once you've fired about 25 rounds with this thing, you'll get used to how to grip it in such a way that you don't have to worry about engaging the safety. I will say I never tripped over that, but my partner, who is brand spanking new to shooting, bumped into it once, and then after adjusting how they were holding it, never bumped into it again. Some will say you don't want a safety when you're learning because the single loudest noise you will ever get is a click when you expected a boom. In the event that you pull your gun in a defensive situation, you need to have the muscle memory caked in to flick the safety off, which means having practiced with your gun a fair amount. I would say that's the reason why the Army has required a safety switch on the vast majority of their pistols. If you are brand new to shooting, you can avoid a couple disasters by, at the very beginning, learning on a gun that has a safety. It's an additional layer of protection while you're learning to handle a gun. And frankly, muscle memory is a thing that you're going to have to develop one way or another. You may as well practice and develop your muscle memory on something that has a safety switch. It's all new to you, so why not add the extra layer of safety? The whole point of this thing is to make it easy to use. Not just shoot, use. People who haven't actually owned guns before don't realize there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to do with a gun that isn't shooting it. Take operating the slide, for example. Because this shoots a very light round, 380 ACP, and it has a very light slide, you can take 2 fingers and pull the slide back without much effort. Not many guns I could just take those 2 fingers and pull this back and have it work fully. For reference, here's a G2C. Here, I'll show you it's clear. Trying that same experiment with just the 2 fingers, it is... I can barely do it, and I definitely can't get it to pull the whole way back. I can maybe be chambering, but if I'm only using the 2 fingers, I don't have the strength because the recoil spring is significantly stronger in order to deal with the heavier slide and heavier round. And that's even before you get into a basic field strip. That Taurus. If you want to field strip the Taurus, pull this back, hold it back with one hand, do this weird pseudo magic bullshit, holding down the slide release with your other hand. Use basically all of your fingers in exactly the wrong way in order to actuate the slide, and that will come apart. You've now turned your gun into 2 components. Now you can take out the spring, you can take out the barrel. Basically, you have the ability to add oil and clean and do all of the things that you would need to do to maintain this gun. Now that's relatively easy for me because I'm a geek and I've been working with those guns for a while. Frankly, it's not nearly that easy if you're just starting out. And Smith & Wesson recognized this, so when you are working with one of these, you lock it all the way back, eject the magazine. Now this is some of the neat secret sauce. What you do is you pop this, and that, you'll notice, rotated this whole assembly so it will now just slide forward. You'll notice it comes forward a little bit, and now the whole assembly is off. You can oil what you need to. Then for reassembly, you take the slide, you make sure everything is lining up properly, and pull it back, flip it forward, and it's back to fully assembled. See, this is designed for people who have arthritis, for people who have nerve damage, for people who have medical conditions that would make using a normal handgun impossible. But it's not only for them. Somebody who wants something very low recoil, somebody who wants to be able to show friends how to shoot, somebody who just wants a good, reasonably small, but not so small that you can't grip it properly backup gun will find a lot of happiness here. And that, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make. Anything that you get, you're probably going to end up finding out later you're not going to want it. Unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know. You're not going to be able to figure out exactly what works for your tactics in your situation until you've really dealt with them for a while. But the answer isn't, don't defend yourself until you know everything. The answer is, get something that will teach you while you're learning, and be an effective backup weapon when you're not. And that, I think, is why I love this thing so much. There's tons of little details, too. This is a standard Taurus magazine, and when you try to load bullets into it, you basically have to push the follower down and chew up your fingers. Anything beyond like 3 or 4 magazines, and your fingers are going to start getting annoyed with you for having to fill this. They make specific things, and you can use a 3D printer to make your own magazine fillers, but regardless, it is far more complicated, especially if you don't have something like that on hand. Smith & Wesson took an idea from the magazines that they use for .22 long rifle, and they're single stack, so they only hold 8 rounds to the 12 of the Taurus, but it has this follower. So instead of having to chew up your fingers, you can just load the next round and then pull the follower down and load the next round and then pull the follower down and load the next round, and you're not holding it down constantly, so you're not chewing up your fingers. Legitimately a hand saver. Now, instead of going through the trigger like I was originally intending to do for all of the guns that I review, I'm going to show you something that I feel like is a more representative sample of useful information. This is my partner shooting 5 shots from a Taurus G2C. And this is my partner shooting 5 shots from the Smith & Wesson 380EZ. Now please know that they are a very, very, very early beginner when it comes to shooting, and this should not be judged based off of the score that they got individually. However, you should look at the groups that are being generated from each firearm. Remember, they're brand new to guns, so the fact that they happen to get 1 on the center in the Taurus is less representational of what the average use case was. But the fact that they had a tight, controlled group with the 380, they were more able to control the handgun in order to put rounds generally where they were trying to get them. What you want in your first gun is not the best gun you're ever going to have. What you want is something you're not going to have to throw away later, or do the equivalent of throwing it away. Selling it cheap, letting it break, considering it a failed investment. I think the 380EZ makes a great first weapon, not only because it forces you to learn the basics in order to handle it properly, but because you're going to want to keep using it even after you've moved on to more complicated systems. That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Turtle Lake Tactical for sending out a sample of the 380EZ for me to experiment with. I really did appreciate that. Remember, use the code QueerArmor on Turtle Lake Tactical in order to get 5% off any purchase, including handguns, rifles, shotguns, ammo, you name it. Hit like if you want to see some newbies try the 380EZ for the first time. Hit subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Make sure you're hitting that little bell icon. Come on, hit the little bell. It's adorable. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, moral doesn't mean legal, and Stonewall was a riot.